Today we're going to go over the daily components of the air brake system check. The performance of the air brake system check include these components. Part 1, the static test. Part 2, the applied air test. Part 3, test the low pressure warning signal. Part 4, test the emergency spring brake activation. Part 5, check the rate of air pressure buildup. Part 6, check the governor cut-out pressure. Part 7, check the governor cut-in pressure. Part 8, check the slack adjusters or the wear pin indicators. Part 9, test the parking brakes. Part 10, test the service brakes. Part 1, the static test. Step 1, on level ground, chalk the vehicle. With basically a fully charged air system, above 120 in most applications, turn off the engine and release the brakes. You'll want to note if you have a greater than 2 psi loss in 1 minute. Note, in some applications, apparatus equipped with electronic gauges, you will need to leave the battery switch on. Part 2, the applied air test. You want to start with the air system charged above 100 psi. With the engine off, the parking brakes off, the next step is to apply the service brakes with normal application pressure. You will want to note if you have a greater than 3 psi loss in 1 minute. Part 3. With the battery switch on, the ignition switch on, this is the point where we pump the brake pedal to bring our air pressure down, and we're checking to see that the warning signals, both audio and visual signals, come on between the range of 55 and 75 psi. Part 4, test emergency spring brakes. At this point, we continue pumping the brake pedal to reduce the air pressure. The spring brakes should activate when they fall between 20 and 45 psi. Part 5, check the rate of air pressure buildup. At this point, we start the engine. To build up tank pressure, we want to switch to high idle. We want to note that the tank pressure fills from 85 psi to 100 psi within 45 seconds in most applications. Step 6, check governor cutout pressure. To perform this test, the air pressure for the vehicle must be rising when the engine is running. Run the engine at a fast idle. The air compressor governor must cut out prior to the needle reaching 130 psi, typically above 120 in most applications. Note, as air pressure builds up, you will hear the air dryer cycle. Step 7, check governor cut-in pressure. To perform this test, the air pressure for the vehicle cannot be rising when the engine is running. With the engine idling, slowly pump the brake pedal to reduce the air tank pressure. Watch the air pressure gauge between pumps to identify when the compressor cuts in. You'll note the needle start to rise. This should occur no lower than 85 psi. Allow pressure to build up and end with a fully charged air brake system. Step 8. The following video will demonstrate the proper procedure for measuring the slack adjusters. With the vehicle chalked and the engine off, release the parking brakes. At this point, we'll need to get somebody in the cab to apply the brake pedal to assist with the test. Depending upon the technology of your fire apparatus, we'll either be making slack adjustment measurements or wear pin indicator measurements. The first step is to take a measurement with the brakes released from the back of the air can to the center of the clevis pin. The next step is to ask for a brake application and take that measurement. And then the next step would be to compute the travel distance to see that it's not greater than 2 inches. Note, typically At 1 3/4, a VRR would be produced to the Fleet Services section. When the slack adjustment measurement exceeds 2 inches, this is near out of service criteria. Consult the Fleet Services section depending on the technology of your fire apparatus. The next video will demonstrate the proper procedures for measurements of the wear pin indicators. With the vehicle chalked and the engine off, parking brakes released, we need to measure the distance that the wear pin indicator protrudes from the backing plate and note that on our documentation. In most applications, when the wear pin indicator moves inwards towards the backing plate and becomes flush, this is when you have approximately 2 weeks of service life on your brake pads. Step 9. Test the parking brakes. With your seat belt worn properly, ensure the maxi brakes are set. Place the transmission in drive. We want to try moving the vehicle at 1,000 RPM max. Step 10, we're going to test the service brakes. Release the parking brakes. Move the vehicle forward at 5 miles per hour maximum, and then apply the brake pedal firmly. Resources available for the daily air brake system check are located on SharePoint under the Team Site Gateway Fire Apparatus Engineers. These documents, Air Brake System Flowchart, and the California Commercial Driver's Handbook